Hi everybody, Kris here from Rasayana. And today we're talking about using Ayurveda's 5 great elements as natural pain relief. I've been a massage therapist, a licensed massage therapist professionally for over 14 years outside of the Boston, Massachusetts area. And most people show up on my massage table because of pain, musculoskeletal pain, psychological pain or emotional pain, digestive pain. These are the common ones that show up on my table. Either someone is recovering from a fall or a sport or motor vehicle injury, or just looking for help with chronic pain that they may have and are looking for natural self-healing alternatives and natural pain management, pain elimination, really, more than management, but to eliminate their pain in natural ways without the use of narcotics, opiates, or other pharmaceuticals. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I've been doing body work and massage for, like I said, over 14 years professionally. And my specialty is in Ayurveda, this holistic medical system, this traditional medical system of India. And before we get started this afternoon, I'd like to begin with a traditional mantra. So you can put aside your writing utensils and sit back in your seats, planting both feet firmly and flatly on the ground. Your palms can rest face down on the thighs, and you can soften or lower your gaze or close your eyes. And collectively, we'll take a nice deep inhale through your nose and sigh it out the mouth. Let's do that 2 more times. Nice deep breath through the nose. Out the mouth. Last time, inhale. Exhale. And keep the lips sealed as you continue to inhale and exhale slowly and smoothly while I recite the traditional mantra to start. Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahana Punaktu, Saha Viryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavaditamastu, Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Welcome and namaste. Thanks for tuning in this afternoon as I share with you my experience, training, and knowledge using Ayurveda and therapeutic massage for natural approaches to pain management. Now, some of you may not be familiar with Ayurveda, the system of medicine from India. It shares the same cultural foundation, philosophy, and language as yoga. And here in the West, yoga arrived a few decades ago, and it got here first. And now Ayurveda, its sister science, if you will, is becoming much more recognized and utilized here in the West and across the globe. And Ayurveda really aims to balance 4 aspects for your health and well-being. And those 4 aspects are body, mind, spirit, and soul. So Ayurveda looks not just to what will make you physically feel better or emotionally make you feel better and self-heal, but also what is your dharma? What is your duty or your role for this lifetime, for your trip, your journey here in this world right now? Are you living a life that feels content and fruitful? Are you happy with your life? These are the kinds of things that Ayurveda places as much emphasis and priority on as the physical body and the mind-body connection, which now most of us are pretty hip to, given that yoga has arrived many, many years ago and started priming the pumps, if you will, for our deeper inquiry into how we can self-heal using these Vedic systems. And in classic Ayurvedic theory, Ayurveda uses these 5 great elements, much like other traditional medical systems like Chinese medicine. Ayurvedic medicine looks to these 5 elements as the key to what make up the universe and what makes up us as human beings and individuals. And that the laws in nature that govern these elements are the same laws at hand that govern our own physiology, psychology, and well-being. Those 5 elements are ether, air, fire, water, and earth. And I'm going to go through each one of these for you in a more direct approach, or how can you visualize and utilize these laws and principles of these elements in your daily life in the modern times? Yeah, because we are in modern times, and this is a system that is ancient, over 5,000 years, it's said that this system has been around. And the wisdom of the yogis and the Vaidyas was passed down orally from teacher to student, often through the use of mantras. Mantras are these repetitive phrases or words or sounds that you're making to help reset the mind. And mantras can have a variety of melodies and rhythms and pitches, and much like a nursery rhyme, they're used for students to remember large amounts of information. And so the mantra that I started with is the traditional teacher-student mantra, which talks about our work together being fruitful and full of light and with no animosity toward one another. That we are coming together and meeting to honor the wisdom of this tradition. And it's a really lovely way to start your work in Ayurveda or yoga. And so I thought I would share it with you today. And if you're interested, just put a little comment down below and let me know if you'd like me to provide you with a printout of that mantra for you with its translation. So these 5 elements, what's the big deal about them? Why are they so important? Well, they're really the basis, like I said, of how our bodies work. And a lot of you who might already be familiar with Ayurveda have probably heard of the term dosha, not dosa, which is the Indian food, but dosha, which literally is difficult to translate to English, but most commonly it's referred to as a fault, that something is off or not in its normal state. It's a state of imbalance. Because when there's balance in the body, there is no fault to be found. And so these doshas, there are 3 of them, and they're formed by various combinations of the 5 great elements: ether, air, fire, water, and earth. And so when someone comes into my massage therapy practice with physical pain in the body, or maybe even emotional or digestive pain, wherever the origin of the pain is complex. And from an Ayurvedic perspective, pain is always the result of stagnation. That something is not moving. There's a lack of flow, whether it's a flow of consciousness, of prana and life force energy, or a lack of flow in our lymph or our blood, or even maybe the lack of flow of the impulse between nerves. When there's a lack of flow, when there is stagnation, this is when we find pain in the mind body. And so when the universe was created, the first element, according to Ayurveda, is ether. Ether also means space. It has no boundaries. It is limitless. Think of outer space and looking out into the stars. This is ether. This is what is the container that holds everything that exists in the universe. It's light. It is very subtle in energy, and it is limitless. So it's where a lot of creative solutions and ideas come from, this ether, this space. And when someone talks about managing their pain, I immediately start to think of the 5 elements. And the first one is space. How are you going to create the space for your healing process? That's the first kind of vantage point you could take using these great elements in your pain management. Oftentimes, like I talked about yesterday, we're dashing from one commitment or task to another without finding that break, that pause to disengage and leave behind the previous event or activity and then re-engage with the new event or activity. And so when someone is talking about having pain, I often will talk to my clients around space. How are you going to create the space and the room in your schedule, in your life, for the steps you need to take for your self-healing? And a lot of that just comes from time management and being able to say no and assert boundaries and know your values. All of that is kind of the prep work for you to be able to create more ether, more space in your life for the healing process to begin. Because without that, I feel like you're just wandering in the dark or throwing darts in the dark. You can't really see where you're going, and you again are just trying to keep your head above water. You're treading water, basically. And instead of swimming and flowing through and creating that flow, you're just treading water, staying still and moving erratically, but not really creating that space. So that's kind of the best analogy I can think of at the moment. But ether in space is the first step in the healing process, in my opinion. That if you aren't going to make the time to seek out a professional to help you, or talk to your medical doctor, or find a good coach to actually walk you through the process, to find time and make your healing a priority in your schedule, is the way I apply ether to pain management. But there needs to be space for things to move, space for things to change. Now, the next element that's created from space is air. Air is sometimes interchangeably used with the word vayu in yoga. And that vayu, air, travels in different directions of the body, performing different functions. When it moves up in the body, it helps with enthusiasm and communication and expression. When prana or vayu moves in and down, it provides the sensory information through the sense organs of the head for you to understand your external environment and be able to adapt to it. Vayus move out from the center of the body to the periphery. This is where your circulation system is at hand. Prana and vayus move in from outside. This is particularly the case with digestion, where a lot of blood in the body then goes to the gut after we eat. And then there's samana, or a circulatory pattern to excuse me, how vayu flows. And that also helps with digestion. That natural peristaltic action in the gut and GI tract to actually move the waste product through the body. And so this is vayu, this is air, this is prana. These are the directions of flow that are responsible for various functions in the body. Excuse me. Take a cup of sip of my tea here. And there are a couple of ways that you can apply vayus in your pain management protocol. The first one that comes to mind is pranayama. Pranayama is often known simply as the skillful manipulation of the breath. It's actually a bit more than that because prana comes in many forms, but for the purposes of today, we'll limit it to those yogic breathing exercises as we're talking about the air element. And so using pranayama exercises can be both invigorating and energizing if one is experiencing a heaviness in the body or a heaviness in the limbs or mind. It can also be very calming and grounding, soothing for those that might be experiencing a real rajastic state of mind. They're very stimulated, maybe overstimulated and agitated, and need to settle down the mind body. And then there's a balancing effect of various pranayama techniques that will do neither invigorating or sedating, but bring you to the middle of the road. And that's really what Ayurveda is. It's a system of walking and living the middle of the road. There's no extremes, there's no absolutes, because it's a living, breathing, dynamic system that will be unique to each individual and each individual stage of life. And so with regard to pain management, using pranayama can be incredibly effective at managing pain, moving prana through the subtle body where it may have become stuck. Yeah? So let's try a very balancing pranayama technique right now. I like to call it the box breath. This is a breath that is safe to do, and you would inhale for, let's start with a 4-count breath. You pause at the top of the breath when your lungs are full and hold the breath for a count of 4. Exhale the breath for a count of 4, and then hold the lungs and breath empty for a count of 4. And so this has a very balancing effect on the mind. Now, if you're not able to hold the breath or inhale or exhale completely by the time we get to the count of 4, that's okay. Just find your natural boundary, hold it there, and then continue with the cycle naturally with your own count. But 4 is usually pretty accessible for most people. So this is done through the nose with the mouth closed. So wherever you are in your breath cycle, exhale first, empty the lungs. Then inhale through the nose for 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold empty. 2, 3, 4. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold empty. 2, 3, 4. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold empty. 2, 3, 4. Continue on your own count. I will mind the time. Smooth and steady breath. And after your next exhale, release the technique. Return back to your natural breath. Close the eyes and observe. How did that last round leave you feeling? Hopefully it left you feeling a bit more grounded, relaxed, and clear. The box breath, or the 4-count breath. This is just one of many pranayama techniques that I teach in my Clear Mind, Strong Body program. And it's something that's accessible to almost everybody. And the thing that I love about pranayama, or one of the things that I love about pranayama exercises, is that it's free. You don't have to buy anything. You can do it anytime and anywhere. You don't need anything for it other than your attention and your will. So pranayama is one such technique of using air to direct prana in the body as it should flow. And you don't need to necessarily be a wellness or Ayurvedic practitioner or yoga teacher to know how it should flow. Your inherent cosmic intelligence of the body knows how it should work. You just practice on developing the discipline to practice the techniques in a safe and consistent manner. So pranayama is one lovely way to use air to manage pain. I remember one time I had, in fact, it was when I was still in Ayurveda school, and part of our curriculum at the time was tasting various herbs and plants and seeds. And one of the seeds, it was a very tiny, tiny seed, I think it was a tulsi seed maybe, had gotten lodged somewhere in a gum, and it created an infection, which I didn't realize until a few days later. But by the time I got back home from Kripalu 10 days later, it had become a full-blown infection. So I had to go see my dentist, and it involved draining some pus and so forth. It was really not pleasant. But what got me through it was deep belly breathing. It definitely helped me control my anxiety and control the physical pain that I was feeling, not just from the infection, but from the actual treatment that I was being given at the time, which involved injections and needles and was no bueno, not fun. But using that deep belly breath really helped. It wasn't easy, but I've had years of practice. So I was able to call upon that in that moment in time. And even the doctor that was or the dentist that was performing my procedure had noticed and commented on it and said, yeah, I noticed you breathing there. That was really great. So using pranayama is a very effective way to move the flow of prana where it needs to be to heal. I did not need to consciously direct the prana to my infection in my mouth. My intelligence already knows how to do that. In fact, wherever you place your attention is where prana will go. We say that where the mind goes, prana flows. So even if you're not able to necessarily visualize that prana flowing to a particular area of the body, just focus on said area of the body. And just by giving a pointed concentration of the mind there, prana will naturally flow there. Yeah, even without a specific breathing technique. Where the mind goes, prana flows, both within the body and out, right? So that's all I'll say about pranayama today, because it's such a vast subject, and I want to move along with some other means or applications of the air element. Now, in classic Ayurvedic theory, the air element is associated with the skin as a sense organ. In fact, it's the hands that are the sensory organ, and it's the skin that is the sensory organ. The hands are the organs of action. So we take in sensory information through the skin. And this is where, as a massage therapist and body worker, I really shine. That I honestly believe I was a body worker or hands-on healer in some capacity in another lifetime. It comes very naturally to me. I have a deep intuition when I'm touching somebody of where the need is. And by using a very loving and nurturing touch through the actual massage stroke, I am providing nourishment to the skin. I'm addressing the air element through the sensory organ of air, because we feel air on our skin. We'll feel the caress of a gentle breeze, or the whispers of a loved one, or we're feeling a whipping wind against our skin, right? And so by using massage, both Western massage and Ayurvedic massage specifically, that element of air is being managed. We're applying and using that element and the sensory and motor organs associated with that element to provide pain relief. Now, one of the biggest differences between Ayurvedic massage and traditional Western massage, or like deep tissue massage, is that it's more subtle, that we're focusing more on the subtle body and that flow of the vayus and prana than we are with musculoskeletal biomechanical issues, which are more often and more directly addressed through the kind of Western massage that most Westerners are familiar with, the deep tissue, the myofascial, the Swedish massage, things like this. And so in Ayurvedic massage, there's a lot of oil that is used on the body, more oil than you would ever use in a deep tissue massage. Because again, with Ayurveda, we're looking to the subtle body. And so we're looking at these energetic pathways in the body in which prana and vayu flows in. And because oil is a very unctuous substance, it is very soothing to the nervous system. And the skin is the largest organ in our body. And so it provides the absorption of that substance and the absorption of the botanical formula that was cooked within the oil. Versus a deep tissue massage, where less oil is used, in fact, little to no oil is used, because we're trying to stretch and lengthen some of the deeper connective tissues in the body. So they're different approaches, but it's really the same element. It's still air we're working with. It's still the skin that we're working with, and we're using a substance to penetrate through the skin and balance the vayus and balance the air that is flowing within or not flowing within, right? Because pain is stagnation and massage is circulatory. So when we're moving lymph and blood in the body, whether it's an Ayurvedic massage or Western massage, you're providing flow, you're providing movement to an area where it's lacking. In Ayurvedic massage, there is not a lot of pressure used. In fact, it's a very light touch, a very soothing and rhythmic touch. That's another unique property or quality of Ayurvedic massage, is that it's rhythmic. There is a very specific tempo to it. There is a very specific rhythm to it. It's not like other types of massages that can vary in its tempo throughout the session. It should be the same rhythm throughout. Now that rhythm might be slow, it might be fast, it depends on what the imbalance is that the practitioner is trying to correct. But for today, just know by rubbing the skin, we're activating what we call marma points. And there is a very specific therapeutic approach in Ayurvedic medicine called Marma Chikitsa or Marma therapy. Marma are these concentrated points in the body where there is a juncture of tendon, muscle, nerve, bone, or ligament. And it's an area where there's a concentrated amount of prana. We call them the body's little pharmacies. And so Marma points were used therapeutically thousands of years ago in India for or by soldiers on the battlefield to heal themselves from their wounds. Also, knowledge of specific Marma points and injury to them would cause potentially death and other kind of malaise. But we're talking about healing here, not warrior battling. But Marmas are powerful and they're subtle. And Marma Chikitsa therapy is something that I offer in my practice here in Winchester, Massachusetts. And it's a beautiful way to manipulate skillfully that flow of prana. That's what it is. And it's very gentle. And it's often particularly helpful for those who might be working with a compromised immune system, or someone who maybe is already going through some kind of cancer treatment protocol, chemo, radiation. Marma is a wonderful way to help bring pain relief when the body or mind is in an exceptionally fragile state. And so there are about 108, some say 107 Marma points in the human body, and they each have their own specific functions. So I'm going to give you one of them right now. This point here, the webbing at the base of your thumb and your index finger. I'm embarrassed to say I don't remember the exact Sanskrit name of it. I think it's Kishur. I'm going to look it up for you. I'm embarrassed to say I can't remember off the top of my head. But I know that the position of it is right here at the base of the thumb, in between the thumb and index finger. If you press into that area, maybe do some small clockwise circles, you may find a particularly tender point. That is the Marma point you want to hit. This is a pain relief Marma point, and it's pain relief systemically for the entire body, not just if you're having hand pain. And this is a wonderful point to massage if you're feeling physical pain in the body. And massage in a clockwise fashion. Why? Because that is the natural order of the universe. The earth revolves in a clockwise direction. The earth revolves around the sun in a clockwise direction. And so we want to flow prana in the clockwise direction. We want to activate that Marma point by using a clockwise direction. And just massaging that point, you don't even need product. You don't need oil necessarily. You can just simply use hand or skin to skin contact. And that is a beautiful, very effective Marma point to massage for 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes to bring some systemic pain relief. Now, aside from Marma Chikitsa, which is very focused on these specific energy points, the classic and traditional Ayurvedic massage called Abhyanga, which I also offer in my office, activates Marma points as well. It's not as specific as Marma Chikitsa because we're using broad strokes, so we're going over the Marma points and activating them subtly. But if you want a more specific activation, then Marma Chikitsa is where you want to go. And so that's just another application of how we manipulate the air element or use the air element through touch and the sensory organ itself being the skin. Okay. Any questions? No? Okay, onward. Moving to fire, the next element in Ayurveda. Fire is created by the movement of air. that the air that travels within ether, within the space, creates friction. And from that friction, fire is generated. Fire is the main act, right? When human beings discovered fire, well, then everything changed, right? Fire is the element of transformation. It's what converts our food into healthy tissue. It's what converts our experiences in life into knowledge and wisdom. It's what creates change and luminosity in the mind body as well. And with the healing approach and pain management, oftentimes in allopathy or Western medicine, ice and cold compresses are recommended for pain management. And while there is some truth to that, it is only a solution short term and for acute injuries until a medical intervention can take place if necessary, if the injury is severe enough, because that will help control edema and swelling and help tamp down some of the nerve impulses that might be occurring. But it's not the end game solution. In fact, the acronym RICE of rest, ice, compression, elevation, which you might have heard of, which is kind of a common approach to injuries and pain in Western medicine, is only now becoming challenged and outdated, as the wisdom of these other traditional medical systems that have been around a lot longer, for thousands of years, use the element of fire. We use heat to bring about the therapeutic process and the healing of those tissues. Because remember, pain comes from stagnation. Something is not moving. And so cold only creates constriction and contraction. So there's not going to be movement or flow when you apply cold. When you apply heat, then you experience expansion. There's a dilating of the blood and lymph vessels in the physical body. There is a relaxation response that is triggered in the nervous system. We all know how nice it is to ease into a warm bath or maybe a hot tub if you're of that ilk, right? And using heat and fire is something we use in Ayurveda. Now, not literally fire, but heat, yes, very much so. Agni is the Sanskrit word for fire. It refers to often the digestive fire in our gut, but also to our intellectual fire in the mind, our intellect, our wisdom. And so in a therapeutic application of using fire, I use all kinds of bells and whistles. So on my massage table, I'll have a table warmer underneath the linens. So the minute the person gets on the table, they are already experiencing a warming effect to bring that calming and bring that expansion and relaxation for flow to occur, or to facilitate the flow that I'm about to induce through my manual manipulation. Hot packs are another. And in Ayurveda, sweating is a very important daily function for the healing process. Malas is a Sanskrit word for waste product produced by the body. And there are three, according to Ayurveda. There's pee, there's poo, and there's sweat. And in Ayurveda, you should be doing all three every day. You should be peeing, pooping, and sweating every single day, because that is how the body is able to remove waste product from the body, ama, this undigested toxic substance that's within the tissues, and create the space in the room for more nourishing substances to come in and heal the body and create flow. So sweating is something that is used therapeutically in a lot of traditional Ayurvedic bodywork treatments. In the classic Pancha therapies, Svedana is therapeutic sweating. There are various forms of it. The most common one is steam. So steam will be applied regionally to an area, either a joint space, if working on a particular condition, like maybe a rotator cuff injury, for example, I might massage that area using herbal tylums, combining my knowledge of structural deep tissue work with the stimulation of those marma points, and then use Swedena and heat as the final finishing end, right? That's why steam and sweating is part of a traditional Abhyanga treatment. That after I've spent an hour plus rubbing the formula into my client's body, I then put a steam tent over them while they're on the table. And there's a little hole at the end, so their head pokes out. They're not completely under the tent, but from the neck down they are. And so I will produce some steam in that tent and bring the temperature in upwards of 100 to 103, 105 degrees Fahrenheit for anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes, depending on the person's constitution and what it is that we're trying to balance. But the sweating process is important because it allows that expansion of the pores and the vessels so that the medicine, the formula that I've been rubbing in, can sink and penetrate deeper into the body, while the malas, the waste product of the sweat itself, exits the body. So this is how we apply the fire element in pain management, helping to create that expansion and create that flow. Now, the next element, where there is fire, there's heat. This heat creates condensation, which creates water, the next element in Ayurvedic medicine. And water is, as we know, even outside of Ayurvedic medicine, the most critical fluid or substance that without it, we wouldn't exist. That the planet is covered with over 75% water. Our bodies are made up of over 90% water. It is the liquid portions of our bodies, the rasa, as it's referred to in Ayurveda, the liquid portion of our body that is so important in the healing process. Now, the word rasa, R-A-S-A, means many things depending on the context. But primarily it refers to, well, actually, if you break up the word to ra, R-A, this means to relish or to praise. And the sa, S-A, refers to juice, sap, liquid. So when we think about when we feed ourselves food, as soon as the food touches the tongue, we salivate. We might even start salivating when we smell the food, when we're preparing it or serving it, right? And so this is rasa. This liquid portion is what in Ayurvedic medicine is the first of 7 tissues in the body. Each tissue building, feeding, and forming the subsequent tissue, which is why a balanced seasonal diet is so critical in Ayurvedic medicine to building strong, healthy tissue. Now, if you have pain and you're recovering from an injury, you want to be building not only more flow in that area of the body, you want to be able to provide the proper nourishment so that strong, healthy tissue can build, that the actual fibers in the muscle tissue and the connective tissue of the fascia are strong and pliable and adaptable. And that all starts with a healthy, balanced seasonal diet. Here in the Northeast, where I'm practicing, we have very long winter and cold months for much of the year. And this creates a very, not only that contraction that I talked about earlier, impeding flow, but it also creates a lot of dryness and stiffness in the tissues. And so Abhyanga and those copious amounts of oil and liquid substance, along with a seasonal balanced diet, produces healthy rasa, right? When we chew our food and in the first stages of digestion, we have this mixture of partially digested food substance in our stomach. And that is chyle, and that is rasa. Rasa it has many meanings. Like I said, it means not only liquid portion, it also refers to the first tissue of the body. It also refers to enthusiasm, interest, um, emotion, even. It's the essence, it's the plasma in the body. And so that's why it's so important, because we just dry out as we age. And part of slowing down the aging process is keeping the tissues hydrated and well nourished. And we do that by building healthy, strong rasa. So right now we are in January here in New England, and it's really cold and dry. And so one way to cultivate a healthy rasa tissue in the body would, during this time of year seasonally, would be to favor cooked, warm foods. You're not going to be eating the raw salads this time of year in this part of the world. That will be considered inappropriate according to Ayurveda. We call that prajnaparada. It's not using your intelligence. It's a crime against wisdom, we say. That by keeping your substances that you ingest warm, then you're bringing that natural balance to the cold contraction that is happening seasonally in this part of the world right now. Now, if you live in another part of the world, that might be different for you. But for purposes of today and where I am, rasa would be best nourished by warm, cooked, seasonal foods. Yeah. And also favoring the naturally occurring sweet, sour, and salty tastes. So these would be foods, sweet foods that are natural would be things like honey and dates and figs. Lots of grains are considered sweet. Um, so is root vegetables, which are a main staple here in New England this time of year. These are very sweet tasting foods. Also, for sour, naturally sour tasting foods, these would be your fermented foods, your citrus foods. This would be naturally occurring sour taste. And naturally salty foods are going to be obviously all of your salts, your sea salt, your mineral, your rock salt, your Himalayan salt. Also could be sea vegetables or nori, seaweed. I like to crumble up some of those nori sheets in the wintertime and just crumble them into a broth or soup, whatever soup I'm making. It's a wonderful way to bring that salty taste into my diet and build strong, healthy tissue. So that sweet, sour, salty is very grounding. It's very nourishing and building. And so those are the kinds of foods you want to favor when you're trying to build healthy tissue, when you're trying to repair tissue. Maybe if you had a muscle strain or a sprain of a ligament and connective tissue in the body. This is where rasa is going to be very instrumental in managing that pain. Because when things dry out, they become stiff and painful. And when they are nice and lubricated and mobile, then you have flow, right? Because we say, move it or lose it, we say in Ayurveda and yoga. You got to keep the body moving. Otherwise, there's stagnation and pain. So that's how we would use water or rasa in pain management from kind of Western meets Eastern perspective. Now, the last element is the earth element, right? So water falls from the sky and nourishes the earth and the soil. Earth has very dense qualities. The earth element is very stable. It's very heavy. It's very slow moving, right? It's static. These are qualities we want of the ground underneath us, right? And so when I think about, how will we apply the earth element in pain management? I think of the botanical pantheon in Ayurvedic medicine. And there are many different herbs that can be used. Some of the ones that are most common for pain management are going to be turmeric, neem, amalaki, bhringarash. These are common herbs used in pain management in Ayurveda. Now, you shouldn't just be going and getting these herbs and using them on your own like a supplement. Do take them only under the supervision and direction of a trained Ayurvedic practitioner. There are potential drug interactions with herbs and medications you could be taking, and not every herb is for everybody, but these are some of the common ones that are used in the tylums, in the formulas, the actual oil formulas that I use in my massage therapy practice. Right now, I specialize only in the Ayurvedic bodywork and massage treatments, but for many years, I also provided the structural deep tissue massages. And whether or not someone was coming to me for Ayurvedic treatment, I would still use these formulas even in my deep tissue massages because they are so powerful in helping to manage that pain and inflammation. And aside from the actual botanicals and the substance itself that I'm applying, and I say substance because it's not always oil. Oil is the most common one that I use as a massage therapist. It's a wonderful substance that the body and skin can absorb very easily because it is a lipid, and our skin is a biphospholipid layer. And so like attracts like. And so that formula of the plants uses the oil as the vehicle for delivery. And it's a really wonderful and effective way that the earth element provides pain relief for us. Aside from oil, sometimes these herbs might be used or cooked into a clay formula, or actually the clay itself might be used, a minerally enriched clay from certain riverbanks is known to also be extremely therapeutic for pain and inflammation. And so if you think about mud is very cooling, right? And so there are some minerally enriched clays that I use on the face, for example, in my practice, that I will then allow to pull out impurities in the skin, and then using other substances and my knowledge around Marma Chikitsa will then stimulate specific Marma points on the body and the face and head. So that's another way that I use the earth element, is through clay, or the herbs themselves, or the oil itself. Sometimes milk is the carrier substance for me to deliver the botanical formula in. Other times I'll use stones themselves. Most of you have probably at least heard of a warm stone massage. Why is that so awesome? Because it provides that heat, right? And also the weight, the sheer density of the stone. Stone is the earth element, literally. And so it's a wonderful way for me to help ground people who might be feeling anxious or experiencing vertigo and dizziness, tinnitus, ringing of the ears. These are common symptoms in Ayurvedic medicine of having too much ether and air element in the body. And so I want to introduce more earth element to bring some weight and some groundedness to the body. And so using literal stones is a wonderful way to bring in the earth element into my bodywork treatments in managing pain. I'll sometimes lay warm stones on the body and just let them sit there and penetrate. I'll use the stones in my hands or as extensions of my hands and massage people with the stones. I use the stone shape itself as a tool. Sometimes I'll lay the stone flat, sometimes I'll glide a stone, sometimes I'll roll a stone along the body, or etch with the stone, using the edge of a stone to work a particular muscle group or area. And a lot of times massage therapists use stones that come with these stone heaters and sets that they buy. And that's okay, but I actually don't. Um, I use stones that I've personally collected throughout various riverbeds and oceans and around my local area. That's because they have a stronger Shakti factor. They have stronger energy to them because there's a connection between me and the stone. There's like a relationship and an awareness there as I'm selecting stones from the environment and thanking Mother Earth for gifting them to me. Then also there's not what is a typical sealant or coating that often is applied to stones that you might find or buy from massage warehouses and massage therapy vendors. They do that to make the stones really smooth and slick, but it also cripples the Shakti, just that natural healing energy that inherently lives within the stone as being part of the universe and earth. Also, a texture of a stone provides some kind of therapeutic release as well. When I am manipulating connective tissue and the fascia in a body, sometimes someone is experiencing musculoskeletal pain, not because the muscle itself is tight or has a knot, but because the encasement of that muscle, the fascia that surrounds that muscle group and all the individual fibers within it, has become of poor quality. There's poor rasa, so it didn't build and it's not actually a good quality tissue. And so when that happens, I can use a porous texture of a stone or a stone without that sealant on it to actually grip the tissue in a different manner when I'm manipulating it. So that's another way I use the earth element in pain management. Now, you don't necessarily need to go get a warm stone massage for this, right? You can go to the beach, find some beautiful boulders, and lay down like lizards do, right? All these reptiles, these cold-blooded reptiles. There's a reason why they go to those warm rocks and stones. And so you can do the same, and it can be wonderful, wonderful benefit. In fact, traditionally in Ayurveda, warm stones are used in that manner. Sometimes there'll be a substance that might be laid upon the stone, and then that substance is lit on fire, and the fire is what warms the stone. And then once the fire dies out, they brush off the ashes, and then you lay down on the stone. That's not very practical here in America. And honestly, even when I was traveling and studying in Panchakarma clinics in India, I never saw that. But I know that it is used. And it's a wonderful way to bring some healing and some of that flow back into the body. So that's really how I apply these 5 great elements, the Pancha Maha Bhutas, as they are called in Sanskrit in Ayurveda, to help manage and eradicate pain in the body. So I hope I've given you some food for thought in some ways of how you relate to these elements in your daily life and how you might be able to bring more of them into your therapeutic processes. Or, see me experience a treatment and see how it feels for these elements to be skillfully managed and manipulated in your body, and how that brings about pain relief, because I don't want you in pain, and I know you don't want to be in pain. So that is what I have for you today. So if you have any questions or feedback or comments, please add them down below. I really like these to be more interactive. There's a lot of you in the group, but there's not a lot of conversation. So, I kind of feed off of your energy here. And so if there is no conversation, no interaction, it's very difficult for me to continue to motivate and offer my time and wisdom in the manner that I do. I want you guys to really support one another and share your journeys with us. I'm on this journey with you too. I've just maybe started and been doing it a lot longer. But these are practices and subjects that I'm interested in, and I think you are too, which is why you're here. So let me know you're here and let me know what you're thinking. And tune in tomorrow at 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Tomorrow, I believe I am talking about my favorite books. I think that's what I'm doing next. Yeah. Books that have changed my life in healing, in my own well-being. Oh, excuse me, that won't be till Thursday. I'm a day ahead of myself. Tomorrow's Unit 3, the do's and don'ts for getting the most out of your body work and massage treatments. How you can prepare, the things you want to think about before you make your appointment, and things you want to be doing before the appointment and doing after the appointment to make sure you're getting the most bang for your buck. I know that these kinds of treatments are not yet covered by any insurance company. They're not cheap either. You know, these formulas that I use are traditionally prepared and sourced. And so they come from India and they cost a lot because they're medicine. And I use only high quality products that are sustainably sourced, fairly traded when possible, and organic, because that way they're healing not only to your body, but to the planet too. So I'm going to be talking about those things tomorrow afternoon. So whether or not you're in the Boston area and you come and see me, or you're somewhere else, tune in and learn how to get the most bang for your buck in these treatments before, during, and after you get on the table. That's it for tonight. Sleep well, be well. Namaste.